queuing for food, huddling around the few working Wi-Fi hotspots. Carrying on in spite of the shelling all around them. This is what everyday life looks like in Kherson. The government in Kiev wants people to evacuate to areas with power and water, away from the Russian guns. Daniil and Victoria stayed put during 8 long months of Russian occupation, and they're not about to go anywhere now. They might seem like old friends, but they only met in September in the cellar of this unremarkable office block as prisoners.
They forced their way into our flat and my grandma started screaming. They let her off into the bathroom. Soon I had a bag over my head and they just started beating me over and over. Who's your president? Who's your president? You're coming with us. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Daniil had subscribed to a pro-Ukrainian chat group on Telegram. Enough for Kherson's increasingly anxious Russian occupiers to come after him. Victoria had been volunteering, taking food to people in need when her group came under suspicion for contacts in government-controlled territory. When the Russians raided her home, they found Ukrainian flags, army souvenirs and postcards.
I guess that means you're our enemy, doesn't it? The interrogator asked me. I agreed with him. But what do people do to their enemies, he asked. They killed them, I replied. You're right, he said, but they torture them first. I didn't think I'd get out of there alive.
Victoria and Daniil had no idea where it was they'd been kept. They only realised they'd spent all those weeks in the middle of Kherson when they recognised pictures of their basement shared online. We tried to go inside, but the police isn't letting anyone in. The risk of Russian mines is just too high. All Daniil and Victoria ever saw was their cell. As soon as they left it, they were kept in hoods, their captors determined to remain unseen. But as little as they could see, they could hear more than they wanted to.
The worst was hearing your screams.
I was the loudest in our basement during the interrogations.
All the cells could hear you yelping. It was unbearable. The men's shouts didn't travel quite as far, but when you started, all I could do was pray that they'd go easy on you.
At my last interrogation, my hands were bound. The pain from the electric shocks was so bad that I didn't even notice that I'd pulled a nail out. All of a sudden, I could feel the blood dripping. My hands, my trousers, they were all covered in blood.
But the most terrifying moment was still to come. After weeks without news, all the inmates were suddenly driven out of the city, their guards telling them it was time to say their prayers.
They made everyone record a short video. You had to say your name, your date of birth, and say into the camera that you were alive and well. For a moment, I was really worried. What do they need this for? Did they need an alibi?
They were told to close their eyes and count to 100. But instead of the shots they'd expected, they heard their captors driving away without them. The likelihood their Russian captors will ever face justice is slim. They torched all the evidence as they left. But at least one good thing has come of it all, Victoria tells me. We're done being scared.